Is up, everybody? We are back with another Halo Flashpoint video. And today, it is the season of giving. That's right, we are pretty close to Christmas, and I thought I'd do a quick pre-Christmas video about a gift. That's right, I have a gift for all of you out there. If you've been playing some Flashpoint and maybe were looking for a few new game modes, well, guess what? I have made 4 custom game modes that you can try out and play right now. I am gonna go through and talk about each one that I've made and maybe, go through the thought process behind it. Explain my rules and things. If you look at the description, all these would be available in the Drive link below. So without further ado, we'll get started. So I have, first up, we have Big Team Battle Slayer. That's right, 8 versus 8 combat. I know a lot of you out there have been asking, oh, can I have more models? Can I do this? Can I do that? That's right. Yeah, I've made one that you can try out right now. So obviously this is played on a bigger map, as you can see by the map layout. This is a 8x16 map, and as such it probably requires a lot more than you can get in a single box. So, you've got 6 spawns for each side. It's basically just Slayer, but for this one I decided you could play it as a just straight 8 versus 8, 1 player versus 1 player, or you could play it as a 2 versus 2. But having it be a 2 versus 2 does make it a bit more complicated, because I didn't want the game to end up going for a super long time, which obviously having an 8, having extra players and extra models is just going to add to the time. I'll read it as it's written, and then maybe I'll explain it a bit more. During setup, all weapon markers should start with a power weapon on it, and from round 2 onward, each empty spot has a new weapon placed on it. Power weapon pools should be at least 16 weapons. When a model dies with a power weapon for any reason other than assault, the power weapon is removed from the board and placed back in the pool. So obviously there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weapon drops, 2 in the spawn locations, and then 4 in the midfield. And like I said, with 16 models, I think you should have a fair amount of power weapons available most of the time. The main difference between this and the normal game is when a model dies with a power weapon, it is removed from the board entirely, other than assault, where obviously it's just normal. If you die in assault, you can pick it up, because I didn't modify that. And that's the way I've written all of these. If I haven't specifically modified a rule, then you just follow the core rules, which I've written at the bottom right. So if you die in assault, it's just rules as normal. You can pick it up, you can drop it on the ground. But all the other times, if you die with a weapon, it's just removed from the board and put back in the pool, which I guess is a downside in that regard. But like I said, the upside is every round, every weapon drop gets a new weapon. So there should be plenty of weapons to go around most of the time. So next up, this game mode can be played 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2. 1 versus 1. Each player makes a fire team of up to 8 models. So obviously that's just modifying the normal 4 model fire teams in the base rules, but I haven't modified, team composition, so you can still only have 2 of each model, 1 legend, and such as that. But for 2 versus 2, it gets a bit more complicated. So players make a fire team of up to 4 models, for up to 8 models per team. Each side cannot have more than 1 of each legend. So obviously, if your teammate and you each get 4 models, but one of you has Chief, the other one can't also have Chief. So you can't have 2 Chiefs on a single team. Teammates will both activate 1 model at the same time, if able. When you activate, both players activate 1 model at the same time. So basically, as the normal game was, you activate, then your opponent activates. Now it's your team activates, and then the opponent's team activates. So they both get to activate 1 model, and you both get to activate model, meaning both teams activate 2 models at the same time. Players may not pass unless both teammates are able to do so. So once again, it just gets a bit confusing if you mess up the turn order in that regard. So it's just like, if you can't both pass, you can't pass at all. Respawning models must come in on a different respawn marker. So if you and your teammate have to respawn, you can't both respawn on the same marker. That just stops you, flooding in a respawn marker and, just smashing someone real good. Teammates may not share command dice. For the +1 model dice, 2 must be spent to gain a desired effect, and 1 or both teammates may contribute to this. So obviously you can't share command dice. So if you have a shoot dice, you can't give that to your teammate's model. But for the +1 model dice, if you want to use that, both of the players may contribute 1 +1 model dice for the total of 2, because it just becomes a bit too powerful if just one person spends 1. Any benefits that would affect your whole team is a normal 1 versus 1 will affect both teammates in a 2 versus 2. i.e. the threat sensor item will benefit both teammates. So if you don't know what the threat sensor does, it just says, basically for the rest of that round, all your models can see all the opponent's models as if they have line of sight. So that would just mean in a 2 versus 2 scenario, then all of your sides, you and your teammates, can both benefit from it. Each team chooses one teammate to determine who goes first. Recon table effects may benefit any teammate's models. So like when you do the initial, roll off for who goes first, you just choose one teammate to make that roll just to stop any confusion. And then the victory conditions are pretty much the exact same as Slayer. So it's just choose a time number to play up to, and then whoever gets the most kills wins. Little modifier that is basically in the tournament pack, but not in the base rules, is if you kill a legend, it's worth 2 points. I just decided to write that in as just a normal rule because it just makes sense. Other than that is Big Team Battle. Big Team Battle's been in Halo since, Halo 2. It's been around. It's obviously goes through a few different variants over time. There's lots of different types of Big Team Battle. You can play, neutral flag or assault, or there's all kinds of different ones, but this one's just straight up Slayer. So next up, we have FFA Oddball, 4-player. So this is free-for-all Oddball. So more enemies on the way, drawn like moths to the flame. 4 commanders gear up and try to protect the sweet, sweet skull for as long as possible. Make allies, backstab, and battle your way to victory. So in this game mode, it is played with 4 people. This is another, increases the player count. It is still played on the base 8x8 grid, and there is quite a bit of rules modification to get it to work properly. So you place the weapon markers, place the oddball. Instead of just regular, roll off kind of thing, I've made the terminology first player. So first player is a set designated player at all times, and that will make sense as I read the rules. But basically, first player chooses a colored deployment zone and their matching respawn markers. Then each other player does so in descending order. These locations do not change, and once again, I'll explain that as we go. So if you look at the deployment map, obviously the oddball is a bit closer to the red spawn than either the other ones, and unfortunately in a grid 8x8 grid, it's just impossible to make the oddball further away from one of the spawns, and it honestly doesn't end up being that much of a benefit for red, because they might just sprint out and grab it, and then the other 3 players just gang up and kill them. So it ends up being pretty negligible of a benefit for red to have the oddball so close. And also, obviously first player doesn't necessarily want to choose the red zone all the time because of where the weapons what weapons there might be available, or how the terrain's set out. So like I said, I don't think it's going to end up contributing that much to how much advantage red gets. But with that, I'll read the rules. So scenario rules. Each player has a fire team of any 2 models. Legends may not be used. So obviously each player gets 2 of any models they want, and you can't take a chief because then you only have 1 model and your action economy goes to trash. All weapon drop markers start the game with 1 random power weapon. From round 2 onward, spawn 1 new power weapon using the same method as spawning items, i.e. randomly placed in any cube. So on the weapon spawns, for round 1, each weapon spawn gets a weapon, which means each player has an equal chance to get a power weapon, even though they might not all be as powerful as each other. At least every player gets at least 1. And then from round 2 onwards, you just spawn a new power weapon in the same way you spawn an item, where you roll 2 d8 dice, which gives you a grid coordinate, and then you put a weapon in there. And that way, 1 spawn isn't always going to be benefited. It's just completely random in that sense. First player. First player is decided by a highest d8 dice roll, with each player choosing a spawn location in descending order of the roll. In the case of ties, affected players re-roll until everyone has a different d8 result. So obviously, initially, every player rolls 1 d8 dice, and then you just choose descending order. Like first player would be the highest roll, then second player is second highest, third player third highest, etc. If you have a tie, then, if both people roll an 8, then both people re-roll, and then we get a different result. If that re-roll then re-rolls into a 5, which another player then had, and both people that got a 5 have to re-roll, and you just keep doing that until everyone has a unique result, and then first player is the highest, and then each player below them is descending order. So first player will set up first and activate first during each round, and then play will progress clockwise around the board, starting from first player. I.e., first player activates 1 model, then the player to the left activates 1 model, and so on. So the first player will choose their spawn first, and then each player in descending order gets to choose their spawn. The ones that choose in descending order aren't necessarily going to go second, because play progresses clockwise around the board. So it goes from red to blue to green to yellow. And that never changes, but I'll read it a bit later, but first player can change. And like I said, it's just 1 player activates a model, and then switches to the next player, and switches. So the activating one model and passing doesn't change. It's just who goes next changes. And that just, like I said, goes in clockwise around the board. A round ends when no player is able to activate any more models. First player always start the next round. So I was kind of on the fence about including it because that's also just basically a core rule. I guess the first player always starts the next round isn't necessarily a core rule, but when no players are able to activate a model anymore is a core rule. But I just put it in there as a pretty clear reminder that that is when the round ends, when every player can no longer activate a model. But say like red activates both their models at the same time using +1 dice, then they essentially get skipped for the rest of the round, but play will still progress clockwise around the board until everyone has activated a model. Unless a player uses a +1 dice to steal first turn, first player will not change. From round 2 onward, any player may attempt to steal the role of first player, with the last player doing so being the new first player. Other than that, the +1 model can only be used at the end of your first model's activation to activate your second model. So that's how you steal first player, is every player may spend a +1 model to steal first turn. And in that sense, you then steal the role of first player, and you become the new first player for the remainder of the game until someone steals it back. Other than that, like it says, you can then also use the +1 model dice to activate a second model after you've activated the first one. But keep in mind, that does give you a disadvantage, because like I mentioned before, when you do that for the rest of the round, you no longer have any more models to activate. So you might, want a quick advantage at the start by activating both models at once, maybe securing the oddball for a little while. But once you do that, you can no longer activate for the rest of the round because you haven't got any more models left. The oddball may be picked up by moving into, within, without, or through the cube containing the oddball using any voluntary movement or crouch, and if there are no enemy models in the cube. While a model is carrying the oddball, the model cannot make any range attacks, use any items, or make a sprint action. If the model was performing a sprint action when it picked up the oddball, it cannot move any further with that action. The model carrying the oddball must use the following weapon profile when making any fight test. And that is oddball, CC, AP2, ESD1, Lethal 1, Smash 1. So I did a few minor rewording, like I changed the terminology to voluntary movement, and that just makes it, I think, a bit clearer that any voluntary movement you do, being in an evade or an extra move dice or sprint and advance, whatever you do, when you do that, you may then pick up the oddball. But it does, like I said, require the voluntary movement to do so. Other than that, I also made the oddball a bit stronger with the Smash 1, just because I felt like it underperformed. And especially in a 4-player scenario, you kind of don't want the oddball being a bit trash. So I made it a bit stronger. The oddball is dropped if the model carrying it is killed, unless the model is killed in an assault. In that case, the enemy model fighting in the assault must take the oddball. The oddball is also dropped if the model carrying it is moved by force, e.g. frag or knockback or pinned. If the oddball is dropped, it scatters, and if it scatters off the mat, it is instead placed back in its starting position. So once again, there's been a minor tweak of the rule there, where if you fight and kill a model in assault, you must take the oddball, rather than have it be a optional thing. And I just felt like that just made the game go a bit quicker. Victory conditions: +1 point is scored by the player holding oddball at the end of each enemy model activation. 1 score point is scored for killing enemies with the oddball. The game ends immediately when a player has 11 points, or at the end of round 6, whoever has the most, or ends in a tie. So that's just basically how oddball works, other than it has the little modifier about games ending at round 6 or ending in a tie. So that is FFA Oddball. Like I said, it is actually a very fun game mode, so I do recommend you check it out if you've got 4 friends to play with. It does end up being very chaotic and very fun. Just, I think, one of the purest forms of the Halo sandbox that you can get in Flashpoint, just because of the chaos and the back and forth and the backstabbing and the making the allies. I do feel like this is a good fun game mode. So a little history of Oddball is, Oddball has been a game mode variant since Halo 1, and it's pretty much been in every Halo release since then. There's lots of variants of it, but my version is basically just the normal Oddball with a few tweaks. So next up, we have Headhunter. Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear their lamentations as you take their skulls. Kill enemies, take their skulls. Profit. So this is a version of Headhunter that we first saw in Halo Reach, and I think maybe it's been in a few game modes since then. It was in Halo 2 as like a kind of custom game mode, I think, and then it's also been Halo Reach, and we haven't really seen it since then. I thought it'd be cool, and I think I made some pretty cool rules that, adapt well to Flashpoint. So if you look at the deployment map, once again, it is a 8x8 grid. You've got 4 weapon drops and you got 4 CP or capture points. So my idea for the capture points is they can be like a piece of unique scenery, or you can just have them be designated as the capture point. You know, you can put something in there if you want to, but you don't have to, kind of similar to the capture the flag game mode in the base game. So place the weapon drops, place the respawn markers, place the collection points, and if desired, this may be any scenery, so, you know, just agree with your opponent. Then the starting player may choose the red or blue deployment. You may also choose a pool of headhunter markers matching their color. So my idea is each player is going to have a set of headhunter markers, and then they should probably match whatever color you have. So if you're a blue team, you should have 15 blue markers. If you're red team, you should have 15 red markers. That just makes it clear on the battlefield whose skulls where. So we'll go into the rules. When a model is killed for any reason, it drops 1 headhunter / skull marker of its team color in its current cube. If that model was also carrying an opponent's skulls, those skulls are dropped in its current cube. So basically, when you die, you drop 1 skull that's from your team. So if a blue model dies, it drops a blue skull. If that blue model is also carrying 3 red skulls, those red skulls are also dropped in the cube. I kind of switched between headhunter and skull marker terminology. I just felt headhunter was a bit difficult to understand, so I switched to the skull marker terminology from here, and I kept that consistent throughout. If a model is ever in a cube with skulls, if they are opposing team skulls, they must be automatically picked up and placed on that model's unit card. If they are friendly skulls, they are automatically removed from the game board. So a few things to note. If a model is ever in a cube with skulls, so what that means is it doesn't matter how you end up in the cube with the skulls, just if you are in the cube with the skulls, what is written is written. So it doesn't matter if it was an advance or you're forced in there or whatever, because in the video game, as soon as you step on a skull, that's your skull. There's no way to get around it. And I just felt for, gameplay and speed, it was just easier to say it's automatically picked up or it's automatically removed. So if you move into an enemy skull, your model picks it up and takes it and puts it on a unit card. If you move into a cube with a friendly skull, that skull is removed from the game completely, just like in the video game. So skulls being removed from the game board take priority over skulls being placed on unit cards. So I do go into a little example here, but basically what that means is, say you have 3 models in a cube, 2 red and a blue. The blue assaults one of the reds, and then the red dies and it drops a red skull. The skull being removed from the board because there's a red model in the cube would take priority over the blue model picking up the skull. That would also be true if the red model that died was carrying 3 blue skulls. It's still automatically that they get removed first before anyone else is able to pick them up. Models may hold any number of skulls, and they do not contribute towards normal item carrying capacity. So I'm just putting a little reminder there that, you may have any number of skulls you want, and they don't, contribute to anything. They're just on the unit card. And then force movement does not make a model drop any skulls it is carrying. So I just put that in there as a nice reminder that doesn't matter if you get knocked back or scattered, you keep those skulls until you die. So victory points. 1 point is scored per enemy model killed, and then legend models count as 2 points when they are killed. So you can just, every time you kill a model, you get a point. 2 points are scored per skull deposited at a collection point. So if you have enemy skulls and you take them to a collection point, you get 2 points for each skull you deposit. So that means for killing 1 blue model, you can kill the model, pick up the skull, take it to a collection point. That'd be 3 points total for killing that model. And then if a model is ever within, without, through, etc. of a collection point using any voluntary movement or crouch, all opponent skulls are automatically removed from the unit card and deposited, and points scored for each skull. So once you enter the cube with the collection point for any reason, and doesn't matter which collection point it is, doesn't matter if it's on the blue side or the red side or whatever, as soon as you enter that cube, you are automatically removing the skulls and putting them into the collection point. Doesn't matter if there's an enemy in there or anything like that. Keep count, track the number of points, and etc. until you reach the required number to win. I guess I didn't put in how many points to play to, but play up to whatever you think would be good. And then obviously, if that doesn't finish the game, then play up to 8 rounds, and then whoever has the most points at the end of 8 rounds wins. So that's my take on Headhunter. I do think it is pretty cool, pretty dynamic, and it's just a nice twist on, the normal Slayer / kind of like Capture the Flag a little bit, in that you have to pick up the models and put them in a collection point. But, if you play that one, let me know how you think it goes. And now we are on to the final game mode, and this one is Super Fiesta. It is Fiesta time. Get silly with it as you destroy your enemies with as many weapons as you can find in the armory. So this game mode is essentially just the normal Slayer, except everyone gets a power weapon, and everyone's having a good time. So you place the respawn markers, but you do not place the weapon spawn markers. And that is because they're fairly redundant, because every model entering already has a weapon, so there's no reason to spawn weapons on the map. And so I go into the rules, during setup, and from round 1 onwards, all models enter the game board with one random power weapon. This includes respawning models. So as it says, every model gets a weapon as soon as it respawns or enters the board or anything like that, automatically get one power weapon. A pool of face-down power weapons should be formed before the game. The more the better, for models to draw weapons from. If there are no power weapons left in the pool for any reason, all power weapons that are on the map are removed, randomized, and placed face down again in the pool, i.e. they are all despawned and reset. When a model dies for any reason, its power weapon is dropped in the cube it was in. In the case of death by assault, the fighting model may pick it up immediately. So those two rules together basically mean if you die with a weapon, rather than being removed and put on a respawn mark or anything like that, that model just drops the weapon exactly where it is, other than if you die in an assault, where the assaulting model may pick it up if they choose to. If you ever run out of power weapons, like it says, you then just remove every single power weapon that's on the field, because, you know, they despawn or whatever, and you just randomize them, put them back in your pool, and then models can draw from that pool. Players may not have more than one model with fast transition as a keyword on their fire team. And that is obviously because the Deadeye is very powerful in this game mode, because they would automatically get their shooting 2 guns every round ability. So if you bring like 4 Deadeyes, you're going to have a huge advantage over an opponent that doesn't have 4 Deadeyes. So I just made it so you can only have one fast transition model on a team. Before the game begins, both players must agree how many kills to play for, and for the rest of this, it's basically just the same rules as Slayer, with obviously maybe some slight rewording, but it's just the same rules as Slayer. This is more based on the Halo 5 version Super Fiesta, so I know there is a Halo Infinite version, but I think the Halo 5 version is a bit more fun, so I just decided to make the rules a bit more based on the Halo 5 version. But with that, those are my 4 new game modes for Halo Flashpoint. Like I said at the beginning of the video, these are available in the Google Drive that's in the description below, so you can just freely download them and play them as much as you want. If you do play them, just let me know, hit me up, tell me how you went, tell me if you won, I'd love to know. If you have any, suggestions or maybe some tweaks you might think would make the game a bit more fair, hit me up, maybe I could modify it. Like I said, all these are freely available because I just wanted to give back to the community for this one, so I just wanted to wish you all a happy holiday. If you wanted to help me out, I really appreciate that. Maybe you could like, subscribe, follow, all that stuff. That really helps me out, lets me know that you're, enjoying the content. Maybe you have some suggestions about what you'd like to see next, or maybe even some more custom game modes that we could talk about and develop. And I think with that, I'll leave you to your holidays. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.